Hello and good evening, everybody, and I'd like to welcome everyone to episode 32 of Album Rant. And believe it or not, I have not talked about these guys too much on this channel so far, and tonight I am hoping to rectify that, and I'd like to once again discuss Canadian power trio Rush. And they were formed in the early 70s, and the original lineup consisted of Jeff Jones on bass guitar and lead vocals, Alex Lifeson on lead guitar, and John Rutsey on the drums. And they recorded a few songs, but in all honesty, things just weren't really working out with lead vocalist and bassist Jeff Jones. Apparently, from what I have read, and I could be wrong about this, but he was having a very hard time making it to rehearsals, and he actually suggested someone by the name of Geddy to take his place. I think his real name is Gary, I want to say, but please do not quote me on that. I could be mistaken, but his stage name is most certainly, without a doubt, Geddy Lee. And from that, in that initial lineup, they released their very first album, released in 1974, simply titled Rush. It was a self-titled debut, and I thought it was really, really good. It was very reminiscent of Led Zeppelin. It was definitely kind of banking off the success of Led Zeppelin at the time, but I mean, there were some very classic Rush songs on there, such as Finding My Way, Need Some Love, Take a Friend, Here Again, What You're Doing, In the Mood, Before and After, and the big magnum opus closer, Working Man, which was performed throughout their history many times on stage, and it was basically a concert staple. Maybe not all the time. There were a few tours they didn't play it, but there were more tours they did play it than didn't, more than likely. But that song still comes on the radio, and I absolutely love it. It's got a phenomenal jam session in the middle, and I just cannot speak more highly of it. But anyways, after that first release, after that first album, John Rutsey was apparently having some trouble. I think Alex and Geddy wanted to take the band in a more progressive direction, more along the lines of Yes instead of Led Zeppelin. And I think John Rutsey kind of wanted to stick to the more Led Zeppelin-like approach. And on top of that, he had diabetes apparently, and the touring schedule was really starting to take a drain on him. So after that first album, he left the band and was replaced by Neil Peart in 1975. So the new guy joined in 1975. And from that, they created one of classic rock's most long-lasting lineups. This lineup lasted from 1975 to 2015. It was incredible how well these guys got along with each other. But from that second album, Neil Peart became the band's primary lyricist. And he started writing about different themes, different ideas. Instead of the usual sex, drugs, and rock and roll subject matter, he instead decided to incorporate more literary subject matter and a lot of sci-fi and epic fantasy themes. And I thought it went really well because in 1975, they released their follow-up album entitled Fly By Night, which is most well known for the title track. It's only about 3 minutes or so, or 3.5 minutes or so, but it's a great song. And it's one of those songs I had heard on the radio so many times, but I never quite connected or put together who that might be. And then when I decided to get into Rush in 11th grade, I was like, wait, they sing this song? I did not realize that. So yeah, that was That was a very, very pleasant reckoning or revelation I had, and I really, really love that song. But on that album, there were other great songs such as Anthem, The Best I Can, Beneath, Between, and Behind, In the End, Rivendell, Making Memories, and Bytor and the Snow Dog. Bytor and the Snow Dog is about 8.5 minutes. At the time, it was the band's longest recording, and this would kind of be a precursor to what the band would evolve into later. This thing was multi-part. It told a big, huge, epic story, and I absolutely love it. It's kind of bizarre, but that's why I love it. But unfortunately, things did not fare so well later that year. They released their third album entitled Caress of Steel, and they really, really upped the prog rock direction, to the point where the entire second side of the album was made of one song, The Fountain of Lament, which ran almost 20 minutes. We also had the Necromancer on the previous side, which ran 12 minutes. And the other three songs, Bastille Day, I Think I'm Going Bald, and Lakeside Park, were your typical 4.5 minutes or so. But those two songs, the Necromancer and the Fountain of Lament, they really went full-fledged prog rock. Again, multi-part. It's not the typical verse-chorus arrangement. This thing went through several different phases. I personally really loved it, but unfortunately, that album did not do so well commercially. A lot of people were not really digging the direction they took, and according to Alex Lifeson, that was the closest he felt the band ever was to failing. Even so much as the record company wanted to drop them. And boy, I am glad that did not happen. But they convinced the record company to give them one more shot. And that brings me to the subject of tonight's review, 1976's 2112. And this was actually the very first Rush album I bought on CD. Well, the first one I bought was the greatest hits, but after that, the very first actual album I bought was 2112. And actually, this was also the first album I bought on vinyl. So let's go ahead and see what's inside this thing. All right, we got a nice little gatefold here, and we got the guys right there. There is Alex on lead guitar. There's Neil, the professor, on drums. And then there is Geddy Lee on bass and lead vocals. And there we have the Star Child. And this would kind of become the band's unofficial mascot for maybe the next couple of years or so. I know he has appeared on several other albums. But looking over here, we have your typical lyric section right there. So if you want to read that, it's there. But let's go ahead and flip over on the back. There are the guys once again. And here is the track list. Side 1 contains one song, the title track, 2112, and it runs 20 minutes and 33 seconds or so. Yeah, it is a beast. It is definitely not your typical composition. As I said, this is definitely not what the mainstream was into at the time. They were definitely pressured to go back to the whole Led Zeppelin thing and just write some sleazy, hard-edge rock, but instead they stuck to their guns and they made this progressive rock masterpiece. As you can see, it is made of seven different parts that all flow one into each other, and it kicks off with Overture. And it starts with these sound effects, these keyboard sound effects that really set the mood very well. It's got a very, very definite sci-fi feeling to it, and it's kind of eerie in some parts, but I really, really love it. But then the band starts kicking in. Starts out, well, It starts a little bit sporadic, I guess you could say. It goes dun dun, dun dun dun, dun dun, dun dun dun, and after that, it starts getting very, very, very fast. It has a nice swinging beat to it. Alex is killing it on the acoustic guitars. The entire band is killing it. And the overture is kind of setting the scene of the composition. Basically, this is based off the works of Rant, who is a very famous writer, but this takes place in the year 2112 in the dystopian future where there is a solar federation of planets. And that brings us to part 2 called the Temples of Syrinx. I think I said that correctly. But the Temples of Syrinx is very, very heavy. It's got a nice, doomy beat to it. Maybe not incredibly fast. Well, I guess it is pretty fast, but I absolutely love the Temples of Syrinx. In this section, it is established that the Solar Federation is run by these monks or these priests who live in, well, the Temples of Syrinx, and they regulate everything. They regulate every aspect of your life, and it's got to be completely awful living in this future. But that is basically the way things are in this time period. So, part 2 is all about establishing the authoritarian control that the priests have over the Solar Federation. We then move into part 3, Discovery. And this part is very, very slow and melodic. I don't think there is any electric guitar in it. I don't think there's any bass in it. I don't think there are any drums in it. It's just got this nice, soft, and sweet acoustic sound to it. And then Geddy starts singing, and we now meet the narrator. He is wandering through the caves, and he finds an old, beat-up, damaged guitar. It's got wires that vibrate. What can this thing be that I found? I know I said that wrong, but I came close. But basically, he starts to wonder, what is this thing? And he discovers it can make very, very beautiful music. And he's like, I've got to show this to the priests. They must see this wonder that I have found. And it could really, really change our society. And then it starts to pick up once again. It's a lot slower than the Temples of Syrinx, but it's just as powerful. We get part 4, Presentation. And in Presentation, the narrator is presenting the guitar to the priests. And they promptly throw him out. They're like, this does not fit the plan. This will not work. You may not experience this music. And he is subsequently rejected and humiliated. And so now he's starting to realize that he can never live in a society where music is a thing. That has got to be absolutely awful. But at the end of Presentation, things start picking up once again, and it starts getting fast, and we got some great guitar work, and I absolutely love it. But then eventually Presentation comes to a crashing end. Then we come to part 5, Oracle the Dream, and the narrator, now knowing that music can never be tolerated in the authoritarian society, starts to dream of another solar existence, another solar civilization, and they are allowed to have music. And he starts to realize what he is missing by living in this society. And this one starts out very, very slow and very, very peaceful, but it's got a great build-up towards the end. I really love Oracle the Dream. That is probably one of my favorite parts out of the title track. But then we come to part 6, which also starts out very, very soft and very, very slowly. This is called Soliloquy. And having come to the realization, having accepted the fact that the music will never be tolerated in the Solar Federation, he realizes he can never experience the beauty of music, and his lifeblood spills over, meaning he committed suicide. But then it ends with the grand finale, part 7, This thing is very, very fast and very, very heavy. It is mostly an instrumental, but what has happened is the liberators have come into the Solar Federation. They have torn down the priests. They have destroyed the temples of Syrinx. People now have freedom, and it all ends with the message: attention, all planets of the Solar Federation. Attention, all planets of the Solar Federation. Attention, all planets of the Solar Federation. We have assumed control. We have assumed control. We have assumed control. Now let's think about that for a second. Alex Lifeson swears on his life that this is a coincidence. But let's count the number of words in both of those phrases. Attention, all planets of the Solar Federation. That's 7 words. He says it 3 times. 7 times 3 is 21. We have assumed control. That is 4 words. He says it 3 times. 3 times 4 is 12. That makes 2112. I am banking on the idea that that was intentional, but if it was just a coincidence, that is one heck of a coincidence. But having said all of this, brings me back to what I was initially talking about. 2112, the song, is awesome. They play this one all the time in concert. Maybe not the full thing. Maybe they just play a snippet of it. Usually they only play the first 2 parts. Now I've seen these guys 4 times. I saw them on the first leg of the Snakes and Arrows tour in 2007. They unfortunately didn't play it. But then I saw them on the second leg and they played the first 2 parts. Then I saw them on the Time Machine tour in 2011 and they played the first 2 parts. Then I finally saw them on the R40 show or tour in 2015, and they played parts 1, 2, 4, and 7. And that was the best I could ever hope for because they have only played the entire thing once, and that was in 1996 on the Test for Echo tour. So that makes up side 1 of 2112, and my favorite song is going to be the title track, 2112. So let's go ahead and move over here to side number 2. Kicks off with a passage to Bangkok, which from what I understand is about marijuana. I never really consider these guys to be very big drug addicts, but I'm sure they puffed it up enough in their lifetime, so whatever. But I absolutely do love A Passage to Bangkok. Its intro sounds a lot like Working Man in a way. They did play this on both legs of the Snakes and Arrows tour. That was the last time they ever played it. But the first time I heard it, for the first couple of seconds, I thought they were playing Working Man. But no, it's A Passage to Bangkok. But it's got a very good swinging beat to it. We're on the train to Bangkok, aboard the Thailand Express, and I probably did a horrible job at that, so please do not be too brutal to me. But I love A Passage to Bangkok. Then we come to the Twilight Zone, and this one is a lot more slower. It's very, very dark, and I'm not fully sure what it's about. Maybe the TV show, but I don't know. But the Twilight Zone never really sat that well for me, at least initially, and I'm going to admit it is still one of the weaker tracks off of 2112, but I still appreciate it for what it was, and it is a good song, but I think the chorus could have been a little bit stronger. But then we come to Lessons, which is track 4. And from what I understand, this is one of the very few songs that Alex wrote by himself. Starts out acoustically, it has a nice little fade in, but then it starts picking up and picking up and picking up, and I really, really do enjoy Lessons. It's a song I used to listen to a lot in the car, and for that I have very strong memories of it. But then we have Tears. And Tears is a very soft song. I've noticed that a lot of times these guys have a ballad as their second to last song on a lot of these albums, and Tears would be the one from this album, and it's not quite my favorite. It's a little bit too soft, but it ends very strongly with Something for Nothing. Again, starts out kind of soft, but then it starts picking up, and you can't have something for nothing and something. Freedom isn't free. I know he said that. Total brain fart. I forgot the lyrics, but nah, whatever. But anyways, that is going to conclude my review for 2112. And yes, I absolutely do recommend this album. This is one of the best prog rock albums out there. It is one of the best Rush albums out there. Again, they took a huge risk on this one by continuing the prog rock direction that got kind of rejected on their last album, and it paid off very, very well. So, the question is, am I going to be back next week? And the answer is yes. But until then, have a very pleasant evening.